Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. This is episode 27. I'm here with Johnny. How's it going, Johnny?
What's going on, guys? What's going on, Garrett? How are you? No more basketball necessarily. We don't have the season back, but we do have a draft tonight, so I am looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I mean, even like those events that they had going on, like the 2K thing, the horse thing, those kind of came to a close. So it's not really much going on, but there's still a few topics, not with just like basketball being played, but like, stuff going on in the basketball world. And I think the biggest one over the past week that has kind of sparked all over social media has been The Last Dance, which is, kind of about like the final season where, the Bulls with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Phil Jackson, they all won, the sixth and final championship. And they showed us episodes 1 and 2. I'm going to ask you first, what were your thoughts about the first 2 episodes?
I personally love them, and I think I speak for the public as well. Viewership numbers kind of were the most ever for an ESPN documentary. It almost doubled the second highest, so I think that kind of shows what the public thought of it. To me, the whole thing was, we all know how good of a dynasty the Bulls were, but this kind of gave us more insight and behind-the-scenes looks. So I thought it was just really cool to watch. I'm going to let you give your opinion, and then I'll kind of go through some of my favorite parts as well.
Yeah, that was kind of like, I hinted at something like that a little over a week ago, but it's going to give more insight on how everything was kind of in the 90s. We all know the storylines. Like, we all know that they won 6 titles. We all know Jordan was the finals MVP, but a lot of people don't realize, like, the whole situation with Scottie Pippen or Jerry Krause or, how underpaid, like, Pippen was, all that stuff, what they had to go through to get there. So it's kind of just, like, a lot of storylines that I feel like a lot of people who weren't really, like, knowing much of it, like, originally are going to kind of figure out as we go on.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it as a whole, you have the Jerry Krause villain story, Pippen and Jordan making fun of him. You have that one quote from Phil Jackson: "It didn't matter if I won 82-0, I wasn't going to come back." Just kind of more insight into Jordan as a basketball player too. Coming into North Carolina, he wasn't a huge recruit, but Roy Williams says, like, within a week he was the best player on the court. You got Pippen, who walked on to Central Arkansas. So you just have a lot of cool things coming together.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I thought it was funny. James Worthy said that he's like, yeah, I was the best player on the team for about like 2 weeks, and it was like, nah, like, not anymore. But I just think it was interesting. All the narratives, like, I mean, we hear a lot of fans from today, like play down like the 90s or the 80s, and say like people were like plumbers, electricians, but then they literally, like, people said like people were playing with like drug addicts and stuff like that. So it's like, it's kind of like 50-50 like with that. But I don't know. I felt like it was funny. I felt like it was very interesting. Definitely deserving of a 10-part series, I think, because I think there's going to be a lot more interesting things to come.
Well, episode 3 is going to be great because that's the Dennis Rodman episode. So certainly something to look forward to this upcoming Sunday.
Yeah, I've already seen like kind of like the trailer for it, like, where he's, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it or whatever, but I mean, I guess like he goes to Vegas for something, but it'll be funny. It should be very interesting, especially Dennis Rodman being a very colorful person, literally, like his hair.
Yeah, I can't get myself to watch any of the trailers though. Like, it's because I've just seen so many different trailers leaked that if I watch them all, I feel like I'm just gonna watch the whole episode in 10-minute spurts off Twitter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure someone like leaked like big clips of it like online. Like, I'm not trying to like watch that. I'm trying to like wait for it to happen, But
yeah, I need something to do.
yeah, I saw like I think they might have showed it like on, I don't remember what show it was, but it was something on ESPN. Like, they showed like a 30-second clip of the show, but it looks interesting. And I mean, obviously episode 4 will follow that as well. So should be really cool to watch this Sunday yet again. But I mean, that's kind of going to cover like the Last Dance so far that we know of. And now, like, we're going to kind of play a game. Some of these are like all-time things. Some of them are current players, but we have about 4 of them. The first one, and these are like start bench cuts. So if you don't know what that means, starting your player, the player that starts is going to be like your first pick. The player that's on the bench will be your second pick. The player that you cut will be your third pick. So for this first set of 3, we have Jason Tatum, Pascal Siakam, and Ben Simmons. Now, who would you start, who would you bench, and who would you cut?
So I actually lean the order of how you listed them. So I'm going to start Tatum. I'm going to bench Siakam and cut Ben Simmons. I thought Tatum was the easiest pick here to start. You kind of look at what he's done since he's had control of the team. Even his rookie season when Irving went down, he pushed the Cavs to 7 games, went toe-to-toe with LeBron. Siakam, I know he had Kawhi last year, second best player, I'd argue, on a championship team. This year it's his team, second in the East right now. So I went with him. Ben Simmons has the numbers, he has the stats, and I'd like to see what they do if a team was built to suit his style. But both of the other players listed, Tatum and Siakam, are the head of their team and are putting up or have more success as a team than the Sixers. So that's why I lean that way.
Yeah, that's a fair point. See, the thing is for me, it's like people will either bash Ben Simmons because, obviously mainly because of his jump shot not being there. And then other people will like praise him because, he has so much value to a team offensively and defensively. He's a good passer, good rebounder. I kind of lean toward that direction. And I know like Tatum and Siakam are better scorers and better shooters. But personally, I think in terms of team value, and I mean, we've kind of seen it in spurts when Embiid's been injured. But I think Ben Simmons has a lot of value. And it's going to be surprising, but I'd probably start Ben Simmons in this case. But I think all of them are really close. I have Jason Tatum on the bench, and I have Siakam being cut, unfortunately. But I think all 3 of them are very close, especially Tatum and Siakam. I don't think like there's any really right answer between those 2.
And I could accept benching Simmons and cutting Siakam, but I've always been a big Tatum guy, and I think I'd start him no matter what in this case.
Yeah, I think that one probably will be the hardest one that we'll have to do, at least I think. So our next group is going to be 3 guards that all are current players. So we have D'Angelo Russell, we have De'Aaron Fox, and we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So who are you going to start, bench, and cut?
I'm going to start Fox. I'm going to bench SGA, and I'm going to cut D'Lo. Once again, similar to Tatum, I've always been high on De'Aaron Fox, and he's been injured lately, but when he's gotten the playing time, we've seen what he can do. Similar with Shai, now that he has his shot with OKC, he's been thriving. I'm just not sold on D'Angelo Russell being able to lead a team. He's more of a scorer, and I know what he did in Brooklyn, but I think a lot of that was because of Kenny Atkinson and the actual system he was in. But it should be interesting to see what he does paired with a superstar and a big who can spread the court and Cat.
So for my list, I also have De'Aaron Fox starting. I think a lot of people have kind of like undervalued him because he's been hurt a lot of the year. But I have De'Aaron Fox starting. Interestingly enough, I think the next 2 guys probably get a lot of praise, and I don't know if I'm really sold on either of them. But I have D'Angelo Russell on the bench, and I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being cut. The thing for me is that D'Angelo Russell, although he's kind of been on some bad teams, like you said, he made the playoffs last year with the Nets. His numbers have been pretty insane, like especially this year. Like he's had so many games where he just goes crazy. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has also played very good this year, especially compared to last year. He's probably one of the most improved players this season. But a lot of that we have to take into account that he's playing with a guy like Chris Paul who has a lot of value. And if Chris Paul wasn't on the Thunder right now, who knows where they'd be. They'd probably be like around the 12th seed or something like that, where a lot of us expected them to be. So I have D'Angelo Russell on the bench, and I have Shai being cut.
And I can totally accept that. And I think for most of these, for the other 2 we're going to do as well, or at least for my opinion, like the player I was going to start was almost a lock for me. But then once you get to the bench versus cut, it can get a little bit closer. And I think that's the case here with Shai.
Yeah, definitely. So Our next two, those are the first two. These are the next two. These are going to be like all-time ones. So we have three shooting guards. So we have James Harden, we have Allen Iverson, and we have Clyde Drexler. We're comparing them on an all-time level. Who would be in your order?
This is going to shock people. I'm going to start Harden. I'm going to bench Clyde, and I'm actually going to cut AI. And on the surface, people would think I'm just crazy. This was probably the hardest one for me. Harden at one was a lock for me. I think that he's a top 3, top 4 shooting guard of all time. Drexler is just so underrated. Look at his numbers. Great defender. Took Portland to the finals. Basketball Reference has their own ranking where they kind of compare players based on win shares throughout their career and per seasons. And AI's closest comps are Eddie Jones and Jeff Hornacek. Clyde's closest comps are Gary Payton, Steve Nash, and Dwayne Wade. Where it gets tough for me is what AI did in 2001 was crazy, carrying them to the finals, but I don't think that's enough for me to take him over Clyde.
I agree with that last part you said, and that's why actually who I'm starting, I don't have Harden starting though. I have Clyde Drexler. And on my bench and cut was kind of hard. Both really aren't known as great defenders, but both can score the ball like crazy. I put Allen Iverson on the bench and I put James Harden being cut, which may be really hard to believe, but I think the fact that, like you said, Allen Iverson's made the finals with such a weak cast before, we haven't really seen James Harden do that yet. And I know he's had to go up against hard teams like the Warriors, but I mean, still, in Allen Iverson, I mean, he's like a 6-foot guard leading a team like this. Like, you have to give him some credit for that. But going back to Clyde Drexler, I think he's easily the best defender of these three. A lot of people underrate him. In his prime, he would get you like probably 26, 6 and 6, which is just insane. And also of those teams, of every all-star that made the finals in the 1990s decade, outside of like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, Clyde Drexler made the most finals of anyone. So I think we have to take that into account as well.
Yeah, and the gap between Drexler's defense and the other twos is bigger than the gap between the offensive game of Harden, Drexler, and AI. So I think that kind of gives him another lean. He's just super underrated, and just like about everybody else in the 90s, he was Michael Jordan away from winning some championships.
Yeah, I saw something the other day. It was like, it might have been in a group chat or something, but someone said Wade was to Kobe Bryant as Drexler was to Michael Jordan. And I mean, in a way, it kind of does make sense. Because, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily Drexler is better than Wade or anything like that, but I think that's about the closest thing that you can get to for like a 2 shooting guard comparison at that time.
Yeah, I never heard that one before, but I totally agree with it.
Yeah. And this last one, we have small forwards, another all-time one, obviously. So we have Scottie Pippen, Dr. J, Julius Erving, and Rick Barry. So who's in your order for start, bench, and cut?
So this one was actually the easiest for me. I'm going to start Dr. J, bench Pippen, and cut Rick Barry. Dr. J has the numbers. Dr. J revolutionized the game. You know, he's just one of the greatest to ever play the game, and he's also one of the most transcendent. I'm going to take Pippen over Rick Barry, though. Even as the number 2 option, Pippen put up great numbers, and then when we saw Jordan retire for those couple of years, Pippen kind of dominated the league. He's just very good. He's a great playmaker. He's a great defender. And if he had his own team, I'm sure he would have kind of taken over the league by storm. Look what he did without Jordan. Like I said, he led the Bulls to some great records.
For my list, I have Dr. J starting as well. I actually have Rick Barry on the bench, and I have Scottie Pippen being cut. A main reason's because Rick Barry led the Warriors to a championship in 1975 as like the main guy. And also, like, in his prime, like, I feel like he gets really ignored, like, when looking at some of the greatest scorers ever. Rick Barry averaged over 35 points per game in his prime. Like, that's just literally insane. And, I mean, obviously, he put a team in the finals who probably wasn't really that great. And I mean, if we're gonna like credit people from the 70s like Kareem for their scoring, then I think we have to do the same for Rick Barry. And he actually got the job done. Pippen, of course, one of the best two-way players we've seen. But ultimately, I don't know if you could have been able to get the job done as the main guy. I think he would have been one of the better players in the league still as the main guy, even if he wasn't playing around Jordan. But I don't know if he could have necessarily won a championship as the finals MVP.
And I can accept that just because Rick Barry is super underrated. I don't know. I just think that on the all-time list, I'm going to take Pippen above Barry, and so I'm going to just bench him and then cut Rick Barry for that reason.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there's not really, I wouldn't say there's that many spots between the two of them, but personally, I just take Rick Barry, and you would take Scottie Pippen, so there's that. But now we're going to go through, like, some what-if playoff series. So, like, what we mean by this is, like, who could have or should have, won a series. Not necessarily, like, playoff series where it's, like, people could have, like, met up or something like that. But do you want to, we both picked 3, I believe. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Go ahead, give your first, and we can just go back and forth then.
Okay, so my 3 that I picked, a lot of them are actually kind of recent. The first one I picked is 2018 with the Warriors and Rockets. The big what if being, what if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt? And I mean, also the fact that they had like an all-time bad shooting performance in Game 7, 0 for 27 at one point, for like a stretch of missed threes. So I think with all that being said, they could have potentially won against the Warriors. And obviously what LeBron was doing when the playoffs was great that year, but I just don't think him by himself really, because there wasn't really much around him giving him support. I don't think that team would beat the Rockets in a playoff series. This one's actually interesting. 2009 with the Lakers and Rockets. The Lakers beat the Rockets in 7, but a lot of people don't realize that Tracy McGrady was injured the whole series, and Yao Ming missed 4 games that series. So if you have both those guys healthy throughout that series, they could probably win one more game in there, probably beat the Lakers, and I mean, who knows? They'd probably go on to the finals as well because obviously, I mean, the Nuggets were great that year. They had Carmelo Anthony in his prime, but I don't know if they'd be able to stop a guy like Yao Ming down low. And I mean, it would have been a good matchup in the finals with the Orlando Magic and Dwight Howard, but it could have changed the champion for sure. 2007 with the Suns and Spurs, though, is my third one. And it's what if Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw didn't get suspended. The series was tied like 2-2. And then Game 5, the Suns lost by 3. But obviously Amari Stoudemire was one of their better players, and Boris Diaw was still really good as well. So they could probably win that game, go on to the finals. And this is another year where they would have played like basically a team with mainly just LeBron, who, again, if LeBron had other All-Stars around him, probably would have went in his favor, or, probably would have still been a battle. But I just don't see a team like the Suns losing in the finals in that case.
Funny, because all 3 of mine are recent as well, but none of them are the same. First one is that 2001 Lakers-Kings series where the Lakers just got an insane amount of fouls in their favor in Game 6, which pushed to Game 7. Those fouls actually came in the fourth quarter. People think the refs rigged the game. If those don't happen, Sacramento probably wins that in 6 and moves on. The second one is the Cavs-Warriors in 2016. What if Draymond doesn't get suspended? Warriors up 3-1. Draymond gets suspended, and the rest is history. Cavs come back, win the next 3, and LeBron gets his first title in Cleveland. And the third one is actually related to LeBron as well. What if Ray Allen against the Spurs and force a Game 7 as well? I think these are the 3 biggest what-if series that I can remember in recent history.
Yeah, and I mean, these are just like 3 that we picked. I think, I guess some other ones I'd probably note, 2010 with the Lakers and Celtics, what if Kendrick Perkins doesn't get hurt? Also in 2000, I believe the Trailblazers were up 16 going into like the fourth quarter against the Lakers. And the Lakers won that finals. It could have been an interesting finals with the Trailblazers and Pacers. Would have been probably low for ratings, but still would have been interesting nonetheless. But those are just some of them. And we're gonna
another one actually.
Oh, go ahead.
Top of my head. Clippers Rockets when the Rockets kind of threw in their bench in the fourth quarter and had that comeback?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what was it? It was Josh Smith, like Corey Brewer, Jason Terry. Weren't they like the ones leading that comeback or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was they had thrown the towel in, and then with those guys, they ended up coming back. One of the most famous meltdowns in history.
Yeah, and that's definitely an interesting point because a lot of those guys I feel like were being like written off at that point. Like I think Josh Smith had just got bought out. Like Corey Brewer at this point was just being on like every single team year after year. Jason Terry, he'd been like traded around a few times. So it's kind of interesting like that, you brought that one up because yeah, that was a pretty important one. And it helped them get to the conference finals for the first time like in the James Harden era.
Yeah, a lot of storylines around that for sure.
Yeah. So we're gonna move on to something more current. So these are gonna be like the best and worst playoff series if the season jumped like straight to the playoffs. So with what the playoff picture is right now, I don't know if you've already like have it on the top of your head or if you have the standings or whatever, but who would you think would be the best playoff series right now, and who would be probably the worst or like least interesting playoff series to watch right now?
So my best one is in the Eastern Conference. I think it's Boston and Philly. You have two teams that at any point can have three or four all-stars on the court. Storyline surrounding them. You got Kemba, who's in that spot to potentially win. Tatum leading a team with Philly. It's the same thing, if they get slipped in the first round, you don't blink an eye, but if they win the championship, you don't blink an eye either. A close second was the 3-6 matchup in the West, which would be Nuggets, Rockets. I think that one would be interesting as well, but I leaned with that. What about you for your best?
So for my best, I think this one would definitely have a lot of playoff intensity around it, and I picked the Miami Heat against the Indiana Pacers. Especially, we have the whole Jimmy Butler, TJ Warren beef that went on earlier this season. Adebayo and Sabonis went head-to-head in the finals of the Skills Challenge. And I mean, they're both really hard-nosed teams. And also the Pacers, I think, it seemed like in the season the Heat kind of had the advantage every single time. But this is going to give time for the Pacers to be healthy with Victor Oladipo coming back, Malcolm Brogdon coming back. So I think this series would definitely go to 7. And I couldn't really tell you who would win. I think it pretty much could go either way. If I had to give like an honorable mention, probably to switch it up, I guess maybe the Raptors and Nets, because if the Nets are fully healthy too with like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they could win that series as a 7 seed, and it would be pretty interesting. But obviously the Raptors have been playing good all year and really haven't missed much of a beat, even though they lost like Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green in the offseason.
Yeah, I guess the whole thing with this is, with this whole hiatus, it gives teams that were banged up time to recover in terms of injuries if we do end up seeing a return.
Yeah. So for the worst playoff series right now, would you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I guess I'll take it. Mine staying in the East as well. I think it's Milwaukee, Orlando. Not that I think it's the only sweep, because I think the Lakers have a very good chance to sweep the Grizzlies as well. But at least with Memphis, you get to see Ja Morant. With Orlando, there's really nobody that makes you want to tune into that series at all.
Yeah, for my worst series, I actually didn't go with the Bucks Magic. I personally think Jonathan Isaac will kind of do. I mean, he might be fully healthy by the time that the league comes back, but if he is playing, I think that he could give some problems to Giannis. Obviously, they won't be enough to beat him, but for my worst series, it's kind of close. I went with the Lakers Grizzlies though. I just don't think that the Grizzlies match up well with the Lakers at all, and I know they beat them earlier in the season one time, but I just don't really see it. Now, if it was Lakers against maybe the Trailblazers, I could see that going maybe even 6 or 7, although I'd probably still pick the Lakers to win, but I think that would be a better series. If I had an honorable mention, I'd probably pick the Clippers and the Mavericks, because if we're jumping straight to the playoffs and, the Mavericks haven't really been together that much, they don't really have much experience around them. It could be a pretty short series against a team like the Clippers, who a lot of those guys have experience, and they will probably get it done pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great chance that would be a short series, but I just think having Luca in there, having Porzingis, there's at least some intrigue to tuning in because on any given night, both of those guys have an opportunity to go out and steal a game or two. With Orlando, I just don't see anybody on that team who can come out and have a monster game to swing enough and snag a win.
Yeah. Well, I will say I think that the Bucks Magic series at least will be a little bit more interesting than the Bucks Pistons last year. I think that was like a record-breaking like series with blowouts pretty much in the first round. Didn't even feel like a playoff series, but I think the Magic will at least do better than that if they were to play the Bucks.
Yeah, and that almost entirely falls uh, onto the health of Jonathan Isaac because if he's not healthy, there's no way that they stand any shot of stopping Giannis, and that could get ugly really quick.
Yeah, it'd have to take like a miracle, like for him to have just a really bad game without him. But we're gonna move on to another thing that's like a current topic. So obviously the 2020 free agency is gonna be coming around soon. And I mean we're gonna kind of give one person that we'd like to see leave maybe, and one person that we'd like to see stay with their current teams. I don't know if you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Go ahead, you could take this one.
Okay, so I mean, I'm gonna say this right now. I'm not gonna say like an obvious answer. I feel like with us both being Bulls fans, I think the obvious answer for who we'd want to leave would be probably Anthony Davis going to the Bulls, but there's not really too much of a realistic chance of that. I mean, I guess it's a possibility, but it's not too realistic, and I'm not gonna say that because that's too obvious. But for the player I'd want to stay, I'd probably say Josh Jackson. I think he's had a really good season with the Grizzlies after starting in pretty much the G League, and no one really gave him a chance. But he's came back, and he's been pretty important to a team that's right now in the playoff picture. And for a player I'd like to leave, I'd probably say DeMar DeRozan. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league right now. And I think a lot of that is because he's on the Spurs, and the Spurs look like they're finally showing their age after like 20-something years. But if he went to the Eastern Conference, maybe he goes back to Toronto, maybe goes to a team like Orlando, whatever, I think he'd finally get the respect back that I think he deserves. I think he's probably still a top 25 player in the league, but people treat him like he's maybe barely top 40.
Couple things. One, funny you picked DeMar. I was thinking about it. I saw something. Somebody said that if Jordan played in today's game, like who would he be? And the response was an incredibly good DeMar DeRozan. And I thought that was actually pretty accurate with the whole mid-range game. Obviously, he would be an insane DeMar DeRozan, but that is his style of play. But to answer the question, who I'd like to see leave, Bogdan Bogdanovic. I'd like to see him leave the Kings. I think they're going to go with Buddy Hield, and Bogdanovic to me is a very solid player. Could be a number 4 or number 5 on a championship team. So I'd like to see him go to a team that's actually competitive. And in terms of staying, I'm going to go with Fred VanVleet, who I like to call Fred Van Elite. Certainly a key part to that Toronto team. The whole city's embraced him, and I think he deserves to get paid.
Yeah, I was looking at a lot of the Raptors players because they have a lot of decisions to make. I mean, they have Lowry, they have Ibaka, Marc Gasol, Van Vliet, like you said. So, and I mean, a lot of those guys are getting quite a bit of money, so it's going to be interesting the route that they go. In terms of the Kings, they're very weird, I'd say. It seemed like at the beginning of the year that Bogdanovich was not happy. Then they started him and put Buddy Hield on the bench. Then Buddy Hield seemed very unhappy. And then at the trade deadline, they were looking to get rid of Bogdanovich. They were looking for moves for him. It's very weird. I think it's like a 50-50 who could potentially leave. I think one of those guys probably will be out of there eventually. Even though I don't think it's really bad having them both. I think they could probably coexist. But ultimately, that's just something funny I found.
I mean, I think they could, but it's just a matter of like what's their ideal lineup? Is it Fox, Bogdanovich, Hield, Barnes at the 4, and Bagley at the 5? Like they have decisions to make because if they plan on playing Bagley at the 4, then you're going to start Harrison Barnes, which means you kind of have to decide between Bogdanovich and Buddy Hield.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, personally, I would probably move on, or either move on from Harrison Barnes or try to get him to convince to be in a different role. I think Bogdanovich and Buddy Hield gives him way more floor spacing, which is kind of like what the game is going with right now. And obviously a player like De'Aaron Fox to like run the offense, Marvin Bagley as well in the post. I think that's a pretty solid team, but I don't know. I just feel like if they were to say that to Harrison Barnes, he would probably also have an issue with it. I think something's probably going to change with one of their like wing players.
Yeah, I mean, they have pieces. They're just nowhere near putting the pieces together. They have a ton of things to change, a ton of things to figure out. It's just a matter of which route they want to go. Like the only two things that are almost certain are that Fox and Bagley are the players that they're building around for the future, and then it's just who do they fill out for the other three positions to really bring out the best in those other two.
Yeah, it'll definitely. Oh my God, I just like slurred my words. It'll definitely be interesting though. We're just gonna have to wait and see, I guess. But that's pretty much gonna do it for the episode. Episode 27 being concluded. Do you have anything to end off on, Johnny?
Sounds repetitive, but same thing as always, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. And as always, leave some questions, some things that we can talk about in the future. During this hiatus, as you've seen, we are just kind of talking about what ifs. We're talking about hypotheticals. So kind of just leave us some more topics, and we'll make sure to include them in future episodes.
Yep, like you said, leave them in the comments below. We will read it. I mean, we put them on here before, but it just gives us more ideas to talk about. But hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.